Discover the power of music to heal and uplift. Introducing NeuroVibe, where rhythm meets recovery. NeuroVibe fuses ambient music textures with rhythmic layers to create music that goes beyond relaxation. It's crafted to resonate deeply, perfect for relaxation, self-reflection, or therapeutic sessions. NeuroVibe invites you to connect with your inner self through immersive sound. Explore NeuroVibe today on SoundCloud and experience the transformative power of music. Tune in, find your vibe, and discover what NeuroVibe can do for you. For more information, check out NeuroVibe on SoundCloud today at soundcloud.com/NeuroVibe-BrainSpotting. NeuroVibe is intended for general wellness and relaxation purposes and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Explore NeuroVibe now on SoundCloud. Dive in, find your rhythm, and feel better with NeuroVibe.
Welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered with Perry Clark. This program looks at mental health from unique perspectives and shows you how to manage your life by finding the knots that help you and stay away from the ones that could be a disadvantage. Now, here is your host, Perry Clark.
This is a reminder that some of the subject matter in this podcast does relate to the subject of violence and sexual violence against minors. Please be used with appropriate caution in listening to this episode, or if you're not feeling up to it, it's completely all right to skip this. Hello all, welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with you today. And I remind you, as always, that this does not constitute working with a mental health professional. Please seek one out in your area. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. So today's podcast, which I was contacted by our guest today and to talk about some of their subjects, but also after my recent trip this year, because we are recording this right now in December 2025, and you're going to be hearing this in January, to his home country, I just felt that this was this conversation that needs to be had, and especially continued to be had for many people of BIPOC identity and or some would consider global majority identity. So today we're talking with Dr. John King, who has been where you are, as he says, at 45, a sudden flood of traumatic memories from childhood, abuse and trafficking hit him like a freight train. He lost everything, his marriage, his home, his sense of who he was. And through years of combinations of neuroscience, practical tools, and honest communication, he found his way to having a bachelor's in applied science, a doctorate in theology, certified executive and life coach, 10 years plus, helping and coaching trauma survivors, founder of Giving Them a Voice Foundation and the Phoenix Collection, author of 27 books, international speaker, and featured award-winning documentary. John, welcome to Untying Knots.
That sounds good when you say it, brother.
Well, I said I had to do some little rearranging for flow.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Huh?
Well, great to be here, man. I'm excited about talking to you, touching bases with your people, helping how I can, having a chat, man.
Very much so, which is one of the oldest things we do in the world. Have a talk.
Amen to that. Yeah.
So as I ask everybody, how did you get here?
Well, to America in particular, or this particular space in time?
Whichever is most comfortable for you.
Now, they're all comfortable. They're all different. Man, this space in time. I never thought I'd be here. This is not a space I ever imagined. You know how we go through our 20s and everybody tells us who we should be. So we spend up until our 30s doing that. In our 30s, they tell us where we should be living and who we should be marrying. Then in our 40s, we're wondering what the heck. And I think we pivot. I think some people call it a midlife crisis. I see it more like a midlife realignment. And we move from living from the outside in to the inside out. So for me, out of all of that journey, when I was 60, I went to Australia and I reconnected with my people for the first time. I'm an Umbrani man. Europeans call us Australian Aboriginal. And when I reconnected with my family, I reconnected with our country for the very first time, it was a seminal moment. I felt I saw people like me for the first time who spoke like me, who thought mightily, had big black fella noses like I've got a big black fella nose. And it was just one of those epic moments that you go, okay, I don't know what this is, but this is. And so wherever that is, that's where I currently am. And the journey to get to here, wow, man, that's been a journey.
And you've had a lot of ups and downs with that, and that's some of what we're here to talk about. And help others, man. And help others start asking questions for themselves and exploring for that healing.
Absolutely, brother.
So, which part of the story would you like to delve into first? Your foundation and the collective, or some of your other story?
Whatever you feel comfortable with, mate. All right. You lead me.
So then let us begin. For many of my listeners, we'll probably start with, tell us a bit more about Giving Them a Voice Foundation and the Phoenix Collective, which are two separate entities, but whichever one you want to start with.
Yeah, for sure. So Give Them a Voice started because at 45 I had recall of about 14 years of sexual abuse and what we would call trafficking today. So I had this recall, and I was trying to find help as a man, and I couldn't. I couldn't find any help as a man. There was nothing for men 15, 16 years ago. There was lots of conversations for women, but very little for men. You couldn't walk into therapy and talk about, look, I was sexually abused as a man by women. Predominantly my abusers were female. And so I went through this process of trying to do it, and the only way I could do it is diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress. I read everything on post-traumatic stress that I could, 200-odd novels, books, poems, everything dating back to the Revolutionary War with France, all the way through to our Civil War, coming forward into World War II, and so it goes on. And even the conversation about PTSD in America is really only about 20 years old. So I read all of the stuff that I could get my hands on. And I started to navigate that, started to try and grapple with what had happened to me as a child, and grappled with understanding how trauma works and how trauma could be navigated, but also utilized. Like at some point, your medals of shame have to turn into, your scars of shame have to turn into medals of honor. At some point, your past needs to stop defining you and start to refine you. And so that was the process I went through for about probably 15, 16 years. And out of that came this Give Them a Voice. I wanted to help give men a voice. I wanted to help give men who have been trafficked a voice. So that's where that came out of. And the Phoenix Collective is on the other side of that. When I realized that we spend all the time about the sexy side of things, the human trafficking and the rescue, but we don't want to talk about where the hard work starts, which is recovery. And I wanted to take this, I was in the privileged position of being able to take 15 years and $200,000 and $300,000 and invest in trying to work out this recovery thing. And I know most people don't have that opportunity. So I've taken that knowledge and compressed it into a series of incremental teachings that we've seen profound impact and effect on people in their recovery process.
Right. Well, yeah. And one of the biggest problems we have in just general care is, it's easy to go with the thing that you see bleeding right there in the moment, but the real work is the recovery. It is. It's, as you said, going into not just surviving, but shifting from surviving into thriving, into the post-traumatic growth, into the evolution and integration of the experience.
Absolutely, which takes a lot of work. And you have to be prepared to sit it with it. And that's where it's interesting as an Indigenous man, the overlay. So I had this undercurrent, and you can't get good fruit off a bad tree. And I had this undercurrent of trauma, childhood trauma, but I had no understanding that went back generationally to when the Australian policy of breeding the blackout, when it went back there where they were taking our women away from our children away from our women away from us through rape or through isolation. And the idea was, in Mbrani, third generation, it's a recessive gene, melanin. In Africans, it's a dominant gene.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time you get to my generation, we're blonde-haired, brown-eyed boys or girls. And so I was journeying along trying to understand the impact of sexual trauma, and there were some things that just weren't clicking in my recovery.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I went back and I discovered my family and my brothers for the very first time that a peace came on me and an understanding came on me, because I had found my people. This yearning was answered. And I think that's a very important yearning. And I've started to understand indigenation in a different way. Even in a different way, I think, than that most are taught it and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
That it is a global thing, that we all belong somewhere and come from somewhere. We are all indigenous somewhere. Everybody has an indigenous place, their country, their manu, as we call it, and how very important it is to listen to the yearnings and the calling of that culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's listening to it for it naturally as opposed to the artificial creating of it.
It is, because there are lots of people and lots of people group who artificially create it. And they often do it out of a victim mindset instead of coming to it with a sense of wanting to learn what it can teach them.
Mm-hmm.
And we can always find reasons to be victims. I think it's far more fruitful if we come not to identify as a victim, but come to identify with a culture that's going to bring us wholeness and take us to a new level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that subtle mind shift is very important for everybody.
Mm. Yeah, and not to say that artificial creating is necessarily bad, but there are definitely ways it can get lost.
Yes.
Very much
Exactly.
so lost. If it isn't, again, coming from that place of, as you said, the manu, the sense of being that is about us succeeding, thriving, and not faulting others.
Exactly. Manu for us means country.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only two places in the world. There is Manu and there is non-Manu. You are either on country or you are not there.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, this sense of being becomes very different. The only real place that you are whole is when you are abiding in country. So that's why there's a sense of timelessness with Mbrani or Australian Aboriginals, because you either are there or they're waiting for you to come home. Because everybody's got to come home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the concept of understanding what it is to have feet on country is very important. I speak to people who are Irish descent who go to Ireland for the first time, and they say that it changes their life, changes their soul, it speaks to them. Or Italians who go to Italy, who changes their life, speaks to them. And I think there's always that sense of where am I from and who am I, ancestral DNA speaking to you. That's really important to connect with, and that brings us level of wholeness and satisfaction. And I think most people don't understand that they need.
Mm-hmm. I felt a degree of it when I went to Ghana, even though according to my DNA results, I'm from a lot of the West African coast, but it's like that was at least the place I could set foot on and connect in that degree.
It's different. For me, I'm too white to be black in America, and I'm too black to be white in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no acceptance amongst people of color here. There's just not that, and there's no acceptance amongst indigenous people here. My wife's Cherokee, so we sometimes find pockets of people we can touch bases with, but we live in Dallas, not a large indigenous population. And then when you go into places like Oklahoma, the indigenous population is so divided because that's the nature of how governments in the West deal with indigenous people. Divide, conquer. That's the mandate. It always has been. So So being able to go back and connect with my people was a very, very rich experience. And I didn't know why, and I'm still unpacking some of that. But I imagine it would have been the same with you. There's African Americans in America, but that's different. Calling yourself an African American is different than understanding you're from Ghana. Understanding that there's culture, roots, and stories which speak to your soul, which is different than going to Atlanta. And I think that's very important for people to, come to terms with.
And it's part of that deeper identity journey that we will all be going through, ideally, as long as we're willing to do the work of the identity journey versus reaching a point and just stopping, which many people do. Now, whether they stop out of trauma or that they feel that they're centered, and that's up to them, that's all part of this factor. But it's really something that's always evolving.
Yes, it is. I think even when you come to a place of saying, I've answered some questions, I think, and I'm just speaking from where the place I'm up to, I have answered some questions, but I'm prepared to say that there are now more questions that need to be answered. And I think human nature is to settle. Now, my nature is not to settle. I don't like the concept of not unanswered questions. I can live at peace with those. But unanswered journeys that have not yet been taken. So I'm at peace that my journey has taken a left turn, a glorious left turn. And I'm very, very interested where that goes. And I think it's that mind of inquiry, that thirst for knowledge, as opposed to, I'm Brani. Okay, that's great. Okay, but what does that mean? My culture's dying. It's the oldest living culture, they say, in the world, 45,000 years, but the reality is it's dying. My family's dying. It's bred out. It's been chased off its land. It's being, the incarceration rate, for example, in the Northern Territory, which is where Warramungu is, it's 100% of everyone in let's say 95, just in case. 95% of everyone in a youth detention center is Mbrani. In general population, it's 85%. Now, you're talking about a population group that is only 3% of the Australian population. So that I understand we talk about the high incarceration rates in America, but if you want to honestly look at something incredibly tragic, then you have a look at what is going on in Australia amongst Mbrani people there. And our children are still being taken off our families because there is lip service to culture and law, LORE. There's not an understanding of it. And there's no concept or understanding of indigenation and how important that is, and how things like country aren't about mining rights or royalty. They're about where your ancestors have always walked and where you want your ancestors going forward to always be able to walk. And they're concepts that most people with an unacknowledged Indigenous background, they can't speak to that. They don't have no concept of what that means.
Right. No, because it's easier to focus on the material than is the immaterial or the intangible. The aspect of the role of you're trying to make the world safer and more comfortable for not just your future generations, but your own return to this world, if you believe in reincarnation and such.
Yeah. So that's very important for us because our ancestors inhabit the spaces that we currently live. They're not ethereal. Now, we're very spiritual people, and our creation stories are very similar to the biblical creation stories, the stories of Genesis. And our understanding of that, even the way we practice our law, is parallel. But there's a sense that we have always walked that land, and we are supposed to, and we will always walk that land in one sense, either in spirit or physical form. And so we feel there's a responsibility to steward and safeguard that land so we can always walk that land. So there's a real tie. The land is not an ethereal resource to be managed, it's a place to live. And we don't need infrastructure, we need freedom. And that is the scarcest commodity of all in our current age.
And it's going on worldwide too.
It is. When some of what we're seeing happen in Europe at the moment is actually a battle for indigenous. Some of what we're seeing in Britain with cultures coming in and being transplanted in, and the goads that are kicking against. Because what I've found is that anybody who comes into a situation and does not acknowledge the value of the indigenous people, and this is not a color issue, this is a genetic issue, they want to impose their values and belief because they don't value what's there. They've come to take and conquer. And I think that's I see a lot of that as the root cause of what we're experiencing is if there's no deliberate attempt to cohabit, integrate, and appreciate, then destruction is the only thing that really manifests itself. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and if we're just using the British Isles as an example, the issue between those who are quote unquote British, dealing with the Welsh, dealing with the Scottish, dealing with the Irish, who in turn had to deal with the Roman Empire coming in and doing the same thing, and so
it goes on. So I don't know how you reset that outside of just acknowledging and being courteous. That there is a damage that happens when whole people groups are uprooted. It doesn't matter, and that's so. Just let's look at the Caucasian population of the British Isles. As you said, you've got the Irish who were conquered, and the Welsh who were conquered, and the Scottish who were conquered.
Not that any of them would say that, but
they were, and they'll acknowledge it because Scotland wants its freedom, Ireland wants its freedom, Wales wants its freedom and independence. So there's these moves, and we've blanketed and said it's race, it's colour. Well, it's not really, it's culture. The Welsh culture is massively different than those, I think it was 11 kingdoms that united under the United Kingdom. The Irish are just crazy, mate. You've ever met a redhead, they're just insane. So they're totally different. Then you've got Scottish. Anyone who can run around in a skirt up in the Highlands, mate, there's a certain level of manhood that happens at that thing, mate. So we've got all these people, and they want to somehow be comfortable with vanilla instead of appreciating and celebrating. And I think that's where it becomes a challenge. Now we've got this massive regression issue happening with people who have no regard for the cultural confines of those. And so the issue that I'm seeing happen there is one of a disrespect for Indigenous people. And that's how I see that, because that's what's happened in Australia, in the land that the Europeans called Australia.
So then let me ask this question, going back into a bit of your history and some of what we've talked about. And I apologize. I'm hoping that's stuff that you've worked on in the past, but the sexual assault that happened to you, do you think some of it was because they recognized you as being
Mbrani?
Yeah, Mbrani.
But I don't know. I think that's speculation. And I've always been wary of it. I've got enough bloody issues to deal with, without making stuff up, But it's a valid point, because part of it was very deliberately, not necessarily in my case, but on a government level, to break up the family, you couldn't speak language, you couldn't have your law, you couldn't have your belief systems, you had to be woven into this secular European society. So, and we all know that there's aspect of abuse which break down psyche. So was it deliberate? Was it overarching culture? An overarching sense of imperialism that was happening? I'm not sure. I don't know if the people who raised me were that cognizant of any of that sort of stuff. What I do know is my birthing records are totally disrupted and inaccurate. Yet there are pieces in the government, but when you start to break it down and really have a look at it, there's government documents, then there's hospital documents, and then there's cultural stories. And the cultural stories point to something else. And at the moment, we put all the weight on the European legal documents,
Right.
as opposed to understanding there's a whole range of different stories that are just as valid. They only don't have as much validity in the eyes of a majority is because they're not in power. And if the power base shifts, then there's a whole range of news stories that actually hold more weight. And, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting thoughts.
Well, because I think there's also the parallel that's for many Black and African Americans here, the histories of what happened and way things were treated in the plantational system, let alone going back to that subject of male rape, the idea of the buck breaking farms.
Yep. Yeah. I couldn't speak to that with any authority. This is a new thought. So I'd have to give it time.
Right. But we do want to generate the idea of people to think about this because it is part of in that indefinite aspect of healing into thriving.
Yeah, and I think thinking about it is good. You just got to. What I would do in a case like this is establish some guardrails for my thought process. Okay, here are the ditches of victimhood. How do I stay out of those? Here is the thing that I'm going to unpack, and I define that thing. Okay, buck breaking. Here's a new term. What does that mean? Was that my experience? Was that my case? No, the attempt was to break me, but was it for a deliberate, was it for the crushing of my soul and the spirit, or was there another overarching agenda? So that's how I would unpack it. And then I would look at that and see it. And just off the top, I think it was to break me as a human being. I don't know if they were of an ilk to do it from a racial point of view. I don't know if that was their paradigm, and I've got no way of validating that.
No. But it sort of comes in that aspect is did it somehow make it easier for them to do it? In that aspect of removing your humanity.
Good point. So, birthing records say I was born in 1963. We weren't seen as human until I think it was the 64 or 67 referendum. I forget the date. Up until there, we were fauna and flora, and we had no rights. We didn't get language rights back until, I believe it was 95. In 95, it was still on the books that it was illegal to speak your own language. So, overarching, was there the concept of dehumanization and breaking and lack of acknowledgement of human beings? Brother, that still happens today.
Yeah.
I was there last year, and to be an Umbrani man in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, it's a fearful experience. It's it is and that's been a challenge on a therapeutic point of view, is coming back into this society and culture, coming back into America, with a whole range of now challenges with some dynamics, in the country, and not being able to access resources because I'm too white to be black. And I can't have soulful or meaningful conversations. And for me to get into that, I've got to unpack a series of things that are really difficult to unpack on a personal and emotional level. So you get stuck in this spot of, I'm needing to have this conversation. It would be very important to me, could be very healing for me, but there's no way to have it. There's no facilities, resources, or people who understand what it is to say, I'm an Umbrani man, taken off my family, stolen generation, raised under European. When I say stolen generation in Australia, they go, it comes with a set of knowledge that goes, okay, now we've got a starting point. I say it here, man, I've got to unpack everything. I've got to unpack 16 years of abuse. I've got to unpack 40, 50 years of trying to scrape my poo together and make it fertilizer. And it's like, you know what? I'll just sit and smoke a cigar and try and work some shit out.
Which in its own way also becomes a statement for many men who have been through sexual assault.
Yeah.
To just stay silent and continue to stew in that, and adds to the things such as the whole loneliness epidemic that many men are facing.
Yeah, loneliness, suicide. It feeds into all that, because you get to a point where it's like, well, if I'm not seen as valuable and I do not see myself as value, then why am I here? And I now have a mental illness. Why am I here? Why am I even engaged in these things?
And
so, interesting.
Yeah, and in one way, that's if it's turned inward. If it's turned outward, I could guess we've got ourselves the incels.
Got ourselves?
Incels, the ones who feel that they are owed relationships, that they're owed position. They're owed position just because of their DNA.
Of DNA, because of color, and you've got that whole, that's very good. So this whole thing rotates around in a nasty mess. And, incel, that's very interesting, because I dealt with that a lot in Australia, is dealing with whole groups of people that were thriving and had an economy of victimhood. And it's like, okay, well, I would rather be broken, homeless, and trying my best to thrive on my own steam, as opposed to seeing, we call it sugar bagging in Australia. There was a concept where the pastoral owner of the land would, once a week, would stand on top of the hill on a Thursday, and it's still pension day in Australia on a Thursday. He would stand and he would have a bag of sugar and a bag of flour, and that was your rations for the month. So every 2 weeks. In Australia, on the second and fourth Thursday of every month, you see them lining up in small country towns to get their check from the overlords. And they take that and they spend it on grog, alcohol, or gambling, or prostitution, or whatever. So this pastoral money bagging and oversight and going and seeing the boss for it is still very much a part, and is in fact propagated by the culture.
Well, even just the metaphor you just brought up there is that they're meeting them on top of a hill, king of the hill. That game being present and being played out. It's just
it is. It's infuriating, and they say, well, we do it every second Thursday because that's what the Aboriginal culture demands. Man, the culture never said that. We said, let us be free and go and hunt by ourselves and wander off and tell our lore and our stories and raise our children. You make us come to town every second Thursday, and you stand and you hold out the sugar bag and the flour bag. And what you're actually doing is speaking to something entrenched in your culture, not in our culture, that in order for us to survive with 7, 8, 10 generations of trauma, no land, no education, no prospects, the only way for us to feed our family. Now take this as men who are hunter-gatherers and warriors, whose overarching DNA is to provide, to fight, to wrestle nature for our families. I have to come cup in hand to the government, beg for food to feed my family. I have no worth and no value. And that's why the suicide rate amongst Umbrani men is off the charts, why domestic violence is so incredibly rampant, and it just feeds. And no one stops to ask the question, well, their answer to the question why is we're black. They didn't stop and ask the question, well, okay, if they're black, then how come are you telling me that 95% of all boys between the ages of 10 and 18, now you can be incarcerated as a 10-year-old boy in Australia, that there's something, no one stops to ask that question. And because that question is going to take time and has to take ownership and has to be looked at and understood, and government doesn't want to do that,
Right. Again, it's easier to deal with the flashy, immediate bleeding wound than the time it takes to actually do the healing. the cleaning
Let's just put a Band-Aid on it again, another Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Give it some antibiotics, you know?
Yeah. Versus it needs to be cleaned out. It needs to be debrided. It needs to either the air or it needs the stitches, which need to be continuously cleaned so that it actually heals. So I think I think that's a lovely place for us to take a break. So we'll be back here on Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with Dr. John King, and we'll be back shortly, folks.
Our lives and the world around us can get messy and frustrating. Untangle and Grow Counseling's focus is to untangle that mess and make sense of it so you have a good foundation to build and grow from. Visit us on the web at untangleandgrowcounseling.com. Perry Clark offers individual psychotherapy, couples and family therapy, and adolescence therapy from a variety of coping materials and resources. Visit untangleandgrowcounseling.com for more information.
Discover the power of music to heal and uplift. Introducing NeuroVibe, where rhythm meets recovery. NeuroVibe fuses ambient music textures with rhythmic layers to create music that goes beyond relaxation. It's crafted to resonate deeply, perfect for relaxation, self-reflection, or therapeutic sessions. NeuroVibe invites you to connect with your inner self through immersive sound. Explore NeuroVibe today on SoundCloud and experience the transformative power of music. Tune in, find your vibe, and discover what NeuroVibe can do for you. For more information, check out NeuroVibe on SoundCloud today at soundcloud.com/NeuroVibe-brainspotting. NeuroVibe is intended for general wellness and relaxation purposes and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Explore NeuroVibe now on SoundCloud. Dive in, find your rhythm, and feel better with NeuroVibe.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
You are listening to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. If you have a question or comment about our podcast, send an email to pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. That's pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. And now, back to the program.
Hello all, welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with you with Dr. John King of the Phoenix Foundation and Finding Their Voice. So we've just been talking a bit about history, identity, sexual assault, as well as the cultural norms that are happening in the Aboriginal culture in Australia. But frankly, it's happening worldwide no matter where you are as a BIPOC person, if you're not living in essentially your home country, and in some cases, even in your home country. But that's not all of what we're here to talk about. We were also talking about one of the very key things of your organizations, which is that aspect of dealing with male sexual assault. So can we talk a bit more about your organizations and what they are and how can people support, let alone call on them for services for healing?
Sure. If they go to drjohnaking.com, you'll find they can access me most places, and also on social at Dr. John A. King. So what we've done is we work in the area of anti-human traffic and trauma recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we focus, when we built an online community called the Phoenix Collective, and it's an app you can download and the community can become a part of. And one of the things I learned early on is, and I became aware that we live in a microwave society. We want to put, push 30 seconds plus for our popcorn and that's it. And, we're ticked off, it doesn't go pop and work out by then. And it's the same when it comes to things like therapy. We want a pill, or we want an answer, or we want it done in 6 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And I think on both the side of the client and on the practitioner, it's all done in 6 sessions and it's finished with. It's not a reality.
No.
If I look at my life, it took me, I had recall at 45. So however that was, excuse me, however long that was to get recall. Now it's 62, so I'm approaching 20 years in what I would say the process of recovery. Out of those near 18 years or so, probably the last 2 years since I was 60, I felt like I had my feet under me. And what I realized is I was trying to make such big jumps to change and recover that I would literally take one step forward and a dozen backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I just realized I've got to stop trying. I need to just focus on 1%. Because if I change 1% a day, in a year I've changed 365%. Thought, well, that's ridiculous. What if I change 1% a week? Well, that's 50% change. That's good, but to be honest, that's probably ridiculous. And I set myself a very low goal of 1% a month with the aim that in 4 years I would have totally recycled and repurposed and evolved my place and my place in the world. And so that's the idea behind the Phoenix Collective, is incremental, obtainable wins that can be consistently done, that change and make measurable outcomes. So that's the whole trajectory of the Phoenix Collective. So we've taken these 15 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars of research and said, all right, we want you to watch a 3 to 5 minute video, and we want you to do one small activity. And we want you to do that consistently for 7 days. Then we want you to take 7 days and think about it. Mm-hmm. And in between, we're going to do group coaching. And so we've designed this program which lasts 12 to 18 months. And the results we're seeing is remarkable. People are finally able to get their head around it in a safe environment, an environment where they control their pace of learning, where they've got the support to do it. And it's always supplementary and complementary to whatever therapeutic sessions or counseling or group that they're involved in. There is nothing, and I think your folks, I hope they understand, there is nothing like one-on-one, face-to-face. Nothing beats it. If you've got a choice between doing a therapeutic Zoom or sitting in a room with someone, always take sitting in a room. Make the effort, take the time, pay the money, get in front of someone. Because there comes a level of vulnerability when someone has the ability to look in and actually see your eyes and not the reflections on your glasses. I think that's a very important thing that was robbed from us with this whole COVID stuff. It was an attack on the soul more than anything else. I know people talk about the impact of the vaccine, the impact of the virus, and how it's decimated our population. I get it. I agree with it. I'm that guy. But what was more devastated was people's emotional and mental well-being.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that no one is acknowledging, taking responsibility, or addressing.
Well, and actually I was thinking about this earlier this week, how much it's no different than what we deal with the issues that are associated with the prison complex of people who get put in solitary. In this case, the entire massive world got put into a form of solitary.
Yeah, where somebody other than yourself controlled your visiting rights, your activity, your food intake, your medication, your ability to grieve. And I don't think we're through it yet. I know that when you look at birth rates and you look at death rates, I've got a friend. I'm going from here to sit in his hospital bed and hold hands and watch him die in the next 3 days. And it's all tied with the vaccine. And this guy's a Delta Force. This guy is the best of the best, the worst of the worst, the nicest human being you could ever meet in your life. And it's a war crime. I know people will say that's conspiracy and not nice. And I think there's far too much evidence. History is on the side of those people that understand that this was dehumanizing. I don't care how we got here. What we experienced was a dehumanizing event. And I think that's the conversation. How we got here, whatever. We're here. So how do we solve this to go forward?
Well, as a conversation I had a few months ago, I'm past the place of worrying about the nomenclature. I just want to deal with the actual problem.
I was on one the other day, a podcast the other day, and I was talking to someone. They asked me about government policy and human trafficking. And they were hedging it towards a political conversation, stating very clearly they were from California and this is what they believe in. I said, listen, it's not a red and blue issue for me. It's a human rights issue for me. I said, if the Democrats had stopped 60% of everyone coming across the border that was being trafficked, I would have voted blue. But they didn't. So my vote was red on the off chance that they'd stop it. Because when you see the intrinsic damage that is done to humanity, when you're pulled out of family and culture and you're thrust as a slave, at the height of the transatlantic slave thing, 377,000 African Americans. Last year in America, between 2.4 and 3.2 million people were enslaved in America, and that's annual figures. So, okay, well, if we want to have some conversations, let's just have some conversations. Let's not associate blame, but let's just have a talk about, dude, that's not right. That's just not a cool thing to do. We want to talk about women's body sovereignty. Awesome. On average, the female person that's trafficked for sex is forced to have 8 abortions. Okay, you want to talk about a woman's right to her body? Well, that's like exactly the opposite. So to want to have these conversations, and all I want to do is have a conversation. And I think we've lost the ability to critically think and talk. We don't have to agree on everything, but surely we can agree that if you get pregnant and you want to keep a child, you shouldn't be made not to because you're going to lose return on investment. Well, I just want to talk. I just want to talk with people. Be able to disagree, agree to disagree, or maybe let's rub on each other like iron on iron, and maybe something will happen where we learn from each other. I think those things have been lost along the way.
Well, we'll create the sparks that can move us in a different direction, as opposed to continuing to using what we were saying in the previous section, showing up on Tuesday at the Hill to get the sugar and the flour.
I don't want that. I don't want sugar and flour. I'd rather starve. But I'm that guy, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's okay to want and need to. If you're going to overcome trauma to the level that we're talking about, you have to have something in you that says, I'm going to make my way. Now, I don't have to make my way on my own. You're better to do that in tribe. But I'm not prepared to be shackled to my past, or be it generationally, be it culturally, be it decisionally. I want to move on.
And to the point, even also, is the stuff that we've just talked about, all of that has happened essentially in 100 years. It's not 1,000 years ago. It's not 2,000 years ago. It's not 3,000 years. It's all happened within roughly a 100-year lifespan.
I think concepts like dominating cultures and invasions, I think they've always happened as long as human history has been around. I think we are more attuned to it and aware of it because of the nature of communication and the shrinking nature of the world. But to your point, wouldn't you hope that at the end of this 100-year cycle, where we actually can have conversations, and we understand that the Irish were amongst the first slaves by the Vikings, and understanding that the Jews and the Egyptians, that they were slaves to that people, and understand, look, dude, okay, listen, we've just decided as far as humanity goes, dude, this shit isn't on anymore. Let's stop. Let's work something out. And I don't care. Like, I would walk away. Now, this will sound disingenuous, but if I could see the world advance, and it would be at the sake of my claim to be an Indigenous man, I would prefer that we walk on. Now, that's not an issue of my past identity. That's an issue of I want to craft an identity as a people. But I don't think my identity and my uniqueness as an individual in my culture is a hindrance. I think it's a flavor like good curry. It's something that's an added to. But when you want everything to be bland, that's when the problem is. And we want to blandify, because that's a word, I've got a doctorate, blandify this entire thing instead of valuing the things. that make it up this beautiful, panorama of human existence.
Which is why so many of us that do believe in that want the Star Trek universe.
Exactly. Yeah, I want to go where no one's gone before, like peace on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as often is said, is that Earth, in its diversity, reached out to space and accepted the hand of space with the Vulcans, versus what some of the other universes of Star Trek have shown, what happens when humanity didn't do that, and just how destructive we continue to be.
I didn't know you were a closet Trekkie, brother.
Oh, not a closet Trekkie. I am full Trekkie. Sadly, I've decided to go in and keep my Paramount subscription so that I can watch Star Trek Academy, but I'm not going to get into the politics. I want my Star Trek. But that also requires hitting so many of these things. It's like we can't keep going into that past. We can't keep, again, showing up to the hill looking for the flour and the sugar.
We've got to make a way.
Yeah.
And I think for men, that's really important. I think the conversation around men and health is a very important one. I think it's one that's more difficult to have now, I believe, than it has been previously.
Well, especially for those who are clinging to the game of King of the Hill versus we want to play a different game now.
Yeah, and I think men, I think the pendulum swung one way too far, and the pushback to get it, like there's this, it was an unattractive swing. Like I don't think anyone will hold. I've married to a beautiful woman, raised beautiful daughters. And never once in my psyche did I ever want to see my daughters or my wife miss out. But my previous wife or my current wife, I didn't want them to miss out on life. And I think with a generation of men who have grown up with that as actually the key concept, and it's like they're being blamed for these other things that went on 2 or 3 generations or 100 years beforehand. It's like, and this group of guys now are like really confused. And it's like, I don't think like that. Why am I being blamed for that? I need a little bit of help over here to try and navigate this. And it's like, nah, you don't qualify,
Or another one, because this is something that recently happened with one of my clients, is the standpoint of he's 40 now. Yeah, he had gotten an injury, so he was sort of laid up taking care of himself. And his girlfriend was basically saying, you don't do enough for me. It's like, excuse me, I'm injured here, trying to recover. And at which point it started that insecurity and shame for him about his past, and also struggling to change the identity that he has as a black man, not being able to take care of his stuff versus, you sitting on this couch, nursing your knee is actually part of breaking that cycle, because it's taking care of yourself. It's making sure that if you did want to go back into the productivity system, you could, but you got to stop and have this knee up with the ice on it.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting concept and comment, because the concept of lazy black man is infused in both the European community and also within the black community. So here you've got a man who is trying to do the right thing, and part of, to your point, your advice was the right thing is actually to take care of yourself, because if the roles were reversed, you would not only feel a sense of, need to take care, but she would demand it. And here you are, and you can't because you're a lazy black man. It's like, bro, you need to come sit with me and we'll have whiskey around a fire for a couple of weeks and just let that knee heal. You can camp in my backyard, brother.
Yeah. And so that was part of the thing I had to help the client start realizing
that's
why.
Very good. Well done.
Yeah, why he was struggling with that, and it was attacking his shame. He's like, no, there's a bit more going on here. Some other layers.
You're valid.
You're valid, and you have to take care of yourself.
That's a hard thing for men, I think, is giving themselves permission to stop and heal. This year I've buried 2 brothers. I've got another brother in jail. He may not come out. They won't even parole him. They've stuck him in a room with 17 other people. Violation of all sort of UN things. One of my best mates, his wife committed suicide, and I'm nursing another brother till he dies. I'll hold his hand till he dies. So that's 5. And I don't process emotion well. I've become aware this year of how I don't process emotion well. I can be emotional to connect with people, but that inner processing was something that was shut down very early in my life. And now understanding my Mbrani background has probably been shut down as survival. And your comment's sticking with me. I'm going to have to sit with what you said earlier on, because that's really, I feel that tugging on my heart. I'm going to have to ask myself some deep questions. So I've become aware of how I don't process those things. And the only way I'm going to is to give myself time. Now, as men, we don't feel that we can give ourselves time because we've always got these series of obligations. And we've got to provide, we've got to protect, we've got to guide our families, we've got to be there. And one thing we don't say is I'm allowed 45 minutes to have a think.
Right. Or to have this aspect of where I don't have to be actively fixing something.
Yeah. And even that's why a lot of men covet the gym. But even that, they're trying to take responsibility for staying fit, and it's held against them. You get all that time to yourself, whereas here I am with the kids, and it's like, well, and there's all this competition and not complementation, which I think, becomes a challenge as well. And, you would see that with the marriage aspect of things for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very much so. But it doesn't just lie with the marriage aspect. It even goes into the evolution of family. It's like, I was just talking to another client recently who was like, they're going to get married. And they're dealing with the fact that their partner's family is happy, wonderful, and inviting them in, while their siblings are great with the aspect that they're getting married, but their parents have now gone into sort of shutdown.
Yeah.
And are not happy with the idea they're getting married.
Interesting.
And
life, man.
Yeah, and we've had to talk about the aspect, especially because their parents are older. It's like the power dynamic in your family has shifted.
Yeah, when you start to become your own unit, it's a different set of rules. And it has to be you've got to leave and cleave. It's,
Or even the other issue of what does it mean for now these two families to actually start really truly mingling beyond just these two people that are making a connection.
Good luck, bro. That's on you.
Yeah, very much so. But I would also bring it back to what we're looking at in indigeneity, in that aspect of communities came together.
Yeah.
New indigenous communities came together and formed. They didn't just come out of just one or two groups of people.
So in 2020, Australia had the biggest fires, totally devastated the country. I mean, the koala bear is on the verge of extinction. I mean, the sheer numbers of hundreds of millions of acres of land just decimated. And the primary reason was that they stopped listening to Indigenous people and allowing them to burn the land the way we have for 45,000 years. We are land managers because Manu is our soul, and it's our responsibility to make sure that Manu and country is in the best condition, not just for the Mbrani, but for everybody. And that's part of our role as Mbrani is if you are on my country, if you were to be in Warramungu, I am personally responsible for Perry Clark to make sure you're fed, to make sure you've got a house, and you can walk into my home anytime if you're on my country. And culture says, I will feed you for 3 days, and then I will help you get to your next spot. So we've got the Mbrani saying we want to steward our land, but you're not allowing us to steward our land. And as a result, because of your European farming practices, you've decimated our country. And there's a swing back now, and they've done this incredibly revolutionary thing, is to listen to the people who have been there for 45 years. Excuse the sarcasm.
Oh, no.
And to your point, to your point, is if we will allow these indigenous communities to form, then what results that come out of it, I think, would be remarkable.
Well, we had the same problem here in California around the same time with the fires that were happening here, and the native population, how they managed the area. Not to mention just also how it handled drought situations too, because it wasn't just the fire, but it was also how it handled situations with droughts as well. But one of the other things, and just to the point you were also bringing up there, is, and another thought that just pondered through my head periodically, what was it that destroyed our concept of hospitality? That didn't allow it to move forward across the world, because that seems like so much of what we're really talking about is the practice of hospitality, which is also part of our sense of humanity.
For our culture, 200 years ago when the Europeans turned up, we welcomed them, we gave them food, but our law says we will welcome you to us, and there's a particular way we welcome. We sit fires, we invite to, we share stories. And our understanding is if you want to come on my country, that's fine, but you've got your own country that you're going to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you don't go back to, then we have a problem, because the resources that I have available here are only limited to feed the people who are living here. So if you want to travel and see our country, then I can pass you on to the next group, and that's where we developed our songlines. I will give you a verbal map, a song diagram of where to go and how to get to the next place if you're journeying there. Now, if you've come from over the sea in your big canoes, then you need to turn around and go back, because you've overstayed your welcome, because you're going to destroy our resources. So I think hospitality with an understanding, it's a little bit like if you're, remember Uncle Buck from National Lampoon's Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
Like Uncle Buck, the thought of Uncle Buck coming and staying for 2 years is a little bit repugnant. But I can put up with Uncle Buck for 3 or 4 days of Christmas.
Uh-huh.
Or Eddie, whoever the guy was in the RV, pumping the sewage down my thing. Yeah, that guy. All right, I'll give you 3 days, brother, but you've got to really clear out, because, you're going to reduce the sale value of my house. I think the concept of hospitality, we have lost it, but we've also lost the guardrails of custom.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a custom when you come into an Indigenous community. There is a sense of welcome, but there's also a sense of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you come to my camp, I'm going to expect you to come with me every day and hunt and collect food. And so whereas if you just turn up as a tourist and sit around and eat my food, well, I'm going to get and have sex with my women, then I'm going to get a little bit annoyed at some point. I'm going to just hit you in the head or spear you in the leg.
Mm-hmm.
Probably can't do that today, but gee whiz, I'd like to. And I think if we're going to look at Indigenous people and culture groups, we've got to look at all of it and understand that there is this welcome and hospitality, but there are boundaries that work because of the nature of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we want to cherry pick the nice parts in some way instead of understanding there's consequence for action.
Yeah. And that also goes in that standpoint of consequence and accountability are very much necessary for things to function. You can't just have all the, like you said, the cherry-picked pieces. And I think that comes fundamentally back into even dealing with our sense of healing. Yeah, it's skin.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good.
It's good for putting the Band-Aid in the immediate crisis, but now the long-term work of closing up the wound is a different process altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good.
Yeah, and that's also in helping men heal so that we can have a future where it's not his against hers or him against him. It's that's all of us, again, reaching for the stars. So where can folks find you if they wanted to talk more and also take advantage of some of your services?
Sure. drjohnaking.com or on social, Dr. John A. King. Reach out. I'm across most platforms in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to connect. Love to connect with people. Love to help people. Love to share it. I've got a book coming out. I'd love you to join the launch list. Connect on that. Have a look at the Phoenix Collective. Book a time. Have a chat.
All right. So I'll have that information in the show notes for everyone. And
thank you.
Thank you, because I loved the conversation. And I think this is a good thing for us to start the year with as we think about what do we want for 2026 and going forward. I mean, yeah, it's not necessarily New Year's and New Year's resolutions, but these are resolutions that we need for the rest of the year going forward.
That's great, brother. Thank you very much.
All right. So Stay tuned, folks. We have more coming up, and welcome to 2026.
Thank you for tuning in for Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. Be sure to join your host, Perry Clark, for another episode on the podcast coming soon on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.